The Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is who's in, who's out, and everything you need to know about this game. So, the Buccaneers will travel to Pittsburgh and take on the Pittsburgh Steelers in Acrisure Stadium tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. This is the first home game for the Pittsburgh Steelers of the 2025 season of the preseason, and the fans will be packed in, ready to see their team play. And this is who will be playing and who won't be. But first, before I get into that, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates. Also like this video. Now, let's get right into it. So, the Steelers and the Buccaneers actually just finished up a joint practice yesterday, in which the Buccaneers went into Pittsburgh in Acrisure Stadium before the preseason game and got some more practice in on one-on-ones, 2-minute drills, 11-on-11s, and things like that. So, there's a lot of players in this week's game that the coaches felt fine about, and they've seen enough in that practice that they're not going to play them in this week's game. And for the Buccaneers, the players that won't be playing that we know of today is quarterback Baker Mayfield, wide receiver Mike Evans, and linebacker Lavonte David. Other than that, we expect most of the starters for the Buccaneers to be playing in this week's game, but those top guys will be out. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, in terms of their offense going against the Buccaneers' first team defense, we will see a lot of that. But when looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers offense and just players in general who will be missing this week's game, they have a lot of them as well. Because quarterback Aaron Rodgers won't be playing in this week's game, DK Metcalf won't either, Jalen Warren's out, Pat Freiermuth is out, Jonnu Smith is out, Isaac Seumalo is out. So those starters for the Steelers missed last week's game as well. Mike Tomlin sees enough of them in practice, knows what they're capable of, and doesn't need to play them in the preseason. So meaning that the players like Mason Rudolph and the other quarterback that we've seen in Skylar Thompson and those other people who played in last week's game, we're going to see a lot of them as well in this week's game. And looking at the Steelers defense who won't be playing, basically the same players who missed last week's game, like Cameron Hayward, Patrick Queen, Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt, Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay, Joey Porter Jr., Deshaun Elliott. Those guys, once again, will miss this week's game as well. So basically, it's just a replica of last week's game for the Pittsburgh Steelers in terms of the players who are in and the players who are out. But once again, just like the Jaguars played their starters, most of them, however, and the Buccaneers are as well. So the Pittsburgh Steelers' second team will be facing the Buccaneers' first team for offense versus the defense, and then the first team defense for the Steelers will basically be a bunch of backups as well. So the Steelers, this is a good chance for the depth to be shown on this team and for players to step up and make their case of why they should be on this roster and end up making the team. So when you face first team players as a backup, it gives the coaches a chance to really see your value. And that's what these players for the Steelers will have to show out versus the Buccaneers. So that's what will be happening in this week's game. But once again, it is in Pittsburgh, in Acrisure Stadium. So these fans will get to see their Steelers team for the first time for this 2025 season and get to see them up front and close. Even if it's just backups, it's great to see Pittsburgh Steelers football in Pittsburgh in Acrisure Stadium. Now, moving over to the keys of the game, or at least something to pay attention to. It's exactly what we looked at last week. Can this run game get going? Because the Pittsburgh Steelers offense line, other than Isaac Seumalo, will be the starters. And also Caleb Johnson will be the running back. So we got to see that develop and hopefully that camaraderie get together and that first team run game be dominant. Yes, later towards the end of the game, we've seen the run game get going against the Jaguars, but we need to see that right away with the first team offense. And that's something to keep your eye on. And Caleb Johnson is always electrifying in terms of someone to watch and pay close attention to. And once again, Mike Tomlin brought him up in practice, his name, in terms of he needs to get going. And hopefully this week is that week. So something else to keep an eye on is guys on the outside like Roc Taylor. You look at Scotty Miller, Robert Woods, all those guys fighting for the final wide receiver spot on this team. It's going to be interesting to see who comes out of that pack. Also get to see Roman Wilson once again as a starter and see him get targeted. He made some big catches last week, and hopefully once again he could do that again. Also, one last thing for the offense to keep your eye on is Skylar Thompson, because when you look at him, he absolutely showed out last week alongside Mason Rudolph in his one drive. So can those quarterbacks keep it going and put up those numbers, and maybe Skylar Thompson can earn that third quarterback spot? Who knows? But Mason Rudolph, we've seen that one drive of him, it looked dominant, and hopefully he keeps that going as well, because we may need him eventually during the season. Anyway, that's the offense. The defense to keep your eye on are just the new defensive backs that we brought in this season. For example, Juan Thornhill, Chuck Clark. You look at Beanie Bishop Jr. here as well in his second season with the team. It's just keep your eyes on those guys, because those are the starters, and those guys will be going against most likely first teamers for the Buccaneers outside of Mike Evans. So it's just going to be interesting to see how those players could play against the first team, and if they could be solid depth and starters for the Pittsburgh Steelers if needed and called upon for this upcoming season. Other than that, just get takeaways, get interceptions, fumbles, and like that, and hope this defense shows out. Anyway, for the Buccaneers, the keys to the game for them is just play solid defense, and most of their players for the starters will be playing, so they probably want to be dominant in the first couple possessions. They don't want the Steelers' backups to be dominant over the starters, so that's probably the big key to the game for them. Those first two drives, get it going, and build that camaraderie. And for example, for the offense for the Buccaneers, what they're probably going to do is get their rookie wide receiver involved and try to get him some targets early and build him up, along with their running backs. Their running backs are going to be their starters as well. Bucky Irving, White, get those guys going and hopefully take that to the season for them. That's something they want to do. And for the defense, just play solid defense. It's the first teamers versus the backups for the Steelers, so they want to probably shut them down and not give up a first drive touchdown like the Jaguars did to the Steelers, even though Steelers are playing their backups versus the Jaguars starters. So that's what the Buccaneers are probably going to want to do for this week's game. And to be honest with you, when looking at the Steelers offense, they look pretty dominant. They look like either way, if it's starters or not starters, they know what they're doing. And from the first week's preseason game, it looks like this offense will be much better this season. Who knows when it actually comes time to the regular season, but that's what it looked like for the preseason. So I believe the Steelers starters, the backups will still be able to show out even if the Buccaneers are playing their starters, and that won't matter. Mason Rudolph, he is stood out, and he is a starter in this league in terms of if he needs to be, or a team needs him to be that, he's willing to step up and always has. And his last season with the Steelers, he showed that and led us to the playoffs. So you have full trust in him. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is kind of your preview of their game versus the Buccaneers. This is week 2 of preseason. After this, we have one more before the season starts going, and we actually get Pittsburgh Steelers football back in the regular season. Anyway, this is your preview. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What are your keys to the game, and what are you most excited for to see for this week's matchup? Is it an offense player, a defense player, or just a team in general? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on who you most excited for and who do you think will make this team and show out in the preseason. Also, who do you think will win this game? Me personally, if I had to answer that question, I would say I'm most excited to see Caleb Johnson in this offensive line for this week 2 matchup and just get them going. It's always nice to build up that run game, and if we could get that going, you feel more comfortable going into the actual season. Another player I'm excited to see, if he does end up playing, is Calvin Austin. Obviously going to be that number 2 receiver. Mike Tomlin did not rule him out, and he's kind of injured, banged up, so it's going to be a game time decision if he plays or not. But if he does, that's someone to keep your eye on. And also, who do I think will win? Well, the Pittsburgh Steelers, of course. I believe they got going in the first game, and they'll continue that in week 2 of the preseason. I guess you can say it really doesn't matter about winning in a preseason, and if you just get going and your team looks good, then sure. But it's always nice to take dubs. It doesn't matter what setting it is. Now, make sure you also subscribe to the channel and turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news, updates, highlights, analysis reports, everything surrounding this team I've covered this offseason. Didn't matter what it was, training camp, free agency, draft, everything. And come the regular season as well, with it right around the corner, I'm covering all Pittsburgh Steelers football as well. So this is the best spot for it. Subscribe to Steelers Report, and until the next video tomorrow, I'll see you guys all later. Until next time, that's it from me. I'm out. Peace.